Hello and welcome to the Satluj Podcast. India's government has launched a once-in-a-generation attempt to redraw the country's political map, claiming it's being driven by a push to reserve a third of seats for women in Parliament and state assemblies. The Delimitation Bill 2026 has, however, provoked an enormous backlash from across the nation, as in fact it's seen more as a Hindutva power grab to further the Hindu nationalist agenda at the expense of the country's minorities, a move to increase the power of the so-called cow belt in the Hindu north at the expense of the wealthier southern states. High-profile observers are even now starting to openly talk about its impact potentially breaking up India, something predicted even by one of the architects of the nation's constitution, Dr. Ambedkar himself, back in the 1950s. So to look at this bill in more detail and to pick the truth from the conspiracy, I'm joined today by our regular guest, Dr. Gurinder Singh Grewal, MD. Dr. Grewal, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Good morning, Angus. Thanks for having me. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. So, what is happening in India? A very mischievous program by Modi government, okay? So they call it delimitation. So they're going to increase the number of seats in the parliament, the lower house. So question is this a representation or is a window dressing? So delimitation, parliamentary expansion, and the restructuring of India as a federal democracy. So let's see what they're talking about. Currently, they have 543 seats in the parliament, and they want to increase to 850. That should have been obvious when they built a new building, which is good for 850. The state's allocation, there'll be 815 seats, 35 for the union territory, and 33% for women's reservation. This is based on 1971 statistics. Now it's 2026, but this is was based on this. This is going to be based on the previous statistics, so because it suits them. So let's talk about the women's representation. Women are not only 33% of the population. Are they really concerned about women's rights and giving equal opportunity? No, this is just a window dressing. How can Modi be considered a women's champion who never treated her wife as a wife? And she has been living separately. She's not divorced and she's not married. So this is the champion of women's rights. So this is all fake news. Okay. Foundational constitution question for 2026. Can a federal democracy remain balanced if representation is determined solely by the population, So answer is no, and let's explore what that means, okay? Ambedkar designed Union of States not a majoritarian monolith, but a parliamentary democracy, okay? He argued that political democracy must function as a system of balanced power, incorporating explicit protection for regions and social groups rather than relying on numerical dominance alone. So he knew what can happen, but he did not put enough safeguards. He also buckled. But if we remember history, the one person who understood this majoritarian problem, which they will have to face, is Muhammad Ali Jinnah. That's why he never gave up the idea that they can live with them. He knew what the majority can do to destabilize a minority. Okay. In 1976, there was settlement, deliberate federal compromise that number of parliament seats will now be increased. So the number was frozen. Representation was designed to ensure that states implementing population control policies, particularly in the southern India, would not be penalized through reduced representation. It enshrined a key principle. Democratic fairness must be balanced with the federal equality. So Now, the new government has come in and they have changed their mind. So, what this 850 seats are going to look like? Okay, let's go to the next one. So, most of the gains in the parliament seats is going to be in the cow belt, like you said. Uttar Pradesh 40, Bihar 20 seats, Madhya Pradesh 14, 15, and Rajasthan 12 to 13. Southern states, Tamil Nadu will have 19, 20 more, Karnataka 14, Kerala 10. It looks like everybody is getting more parliamentary seats, but the balance will be shifted. And the cow belt will have enough seats to give a majority to BJP or RSS supported organizations. So this will not help the South. South will always stay a minority, and the Modi government will not need them for coalition or any such things. So they are being punished. I think once we talked, what the South has done, they have done population control, and they are prosperous, and they are being punished. Tamil Nadu puts in $1 into federal coffer, they get 28 cents back. UP gets two and a half rupees back, and Bihar gets 7 some rupees back. So South and Maharashtra are being punished. So for doing population control and being successful, they are being punished. So absolute seat gain marks a severe collapse in relative parliamentary voice. Redistribution metrics. Absolute seats gain heavily in the north, southern bloc moderately. So Lok Sabha will be dominated by the northern part, the cow belt part, and southern states will gain the seat in absolute number, but their overall percentage of the Lok Sabha plummets, permanently reducing their influence in national decision making. So this is very dangerous step. They have a problem with the Kashmir, and there's a problem with the Punjab. Both states want to be independent. There's a problem with the eastern states, where there's a Christian minority is not very happy, and they're killing Christians in Manipur. Now the South is going to be permanently reduced to minority status, and they will have to join themselves and fight it out to be independent country. The population performance paradox penalize successful governance. The paradox scale, demolition growth, demographic growth, that's the scale. The heavy side is a cow belt. The southern states, where they had better health, economic output, high literacy, lower fertility. They practice the family practice. We are two, and we will have only two. The slogan Indira Gandhi started. They followed, but the North didn't follow. Now they are going to be punished for doing what the government was saying is a good practice. By privileging sheer demographic growth as the primary metric of representation, the impending delimitation effectively penalized states that have succeeded in demographic stabilization and socio-economic advancement. So they are going to be punished for limiting their population growth and being successful economically and every other way. Representation based purely on population fractures cooperative federalism. So this is supposed to be federalism when the British left, but they have become majoritarian state. Okay, governor reduce fiscal and bargaining power, loss of parliamentary seats, governance, successful governance, and population stabilization is going to punish the southern states. Okay. This paradox produces structure breakdown. Governance success directly leads to political disadvantage. This destroys the incentive structure that underpin India's federal government and raise normative concern about fundamental fairness. So demographic redistribution accelerates majoritarian drift. Because the historically dominant party draws its strongest support from high population northern states, the projected seat distribution creates a self reinforcing cycle, reinforces electoral dominance, dramatically reduces dependence on coalition partners, systematically weakens regional parties. India was never one country, and now I think in 79 years they have not been able to satisfy each other and behave like one country, especially the majority community has changed its colors because they figured out to rule India, they don't necessarily need others, but they are, I think, they are mistaken. They are mistaken. This is going to accelerate the breakdown of this country. So let's compare with other global democracies, which India lacks structural shock absorbers. In United States, we have two houses. The lower house is based on the population, but in the upper house, the Senate, every state have equal representation. So that keeps the balance. Every state has two senators, whether the state has a bigger or small population. So that keeps the balance. In Germany, employs a mixed member system combining proportional representation with explicit regional balance. But in India, upper house is very weak. Lower house or Lok Sabha is the functioning parliament, and they are going to change the structure of that in favor of Hindutva people. The Rajya Sabha lacks the constitutional weight of the US Senate. Lok Sabha redistribution will disproportionately devastate India's federal balance. So this will, what they call the straw, which will break camel's back. So political redrawing, you can see the picture on the right, India's parliament, India's breaking. While contexts differ, both represent large-scale reconfiguration of political space driven by administrative logic, yielding massive uneven regional consequences. In 1947, territories was altered without broad consent. They divided Punjab and Bengal without their consent. Today, political weight is being shifted with equally profound implication for the center. Now, they are going to disfranchise the southern states. First they divided my state, even they didn't ask people what they wanted. They divided Bengal. Now they are going to divide country into different way where the south will lose any say in it. Okay. Demography as destiny, the danger of a single matter population. Partition demonstrated the tragedy of reducing a complex society to a single factor religion. Today, the single deterministic factor is population. Relying exclusively on demography ignores the multidimensional contribution that makes a state valuable to the union. Turning population growth into both social and political destiny will destroy the state. Okay. What we're talking is a representation without balance violates constitutional morality. Okay. Ambedkar's concept of constitutional morality requires restraint in majoritarian power, protection of diversity, and balance between competing interests. The emerging system guarantees widening regional disparities, a severely weakened federal equilibrium, policy outcome that reflects unchecked majoritarian preferences. So you can see this column, you can say this is parliament of the country, regional imbalance, and this structure is going to break. I think the question is how long, but this question will not be sustained if South is reduced to permanent majority. So there are going to be Kashmir and Punjab on the northwest, and the eastern states they call sister states. There are 7 or 9 of them. They are going to rethink what are they doing in India. So they will split, and now the 5 or 6 the southern states, I think they will be forced to rethink their presence in this union, and they will have to correct that by separating. A fundamental choice for survival of the republic. Where population-based democracy leads to majoritarian centralization, balanced federal democracy, shared and equitable power. But this majoritarian states and the Hindutva people do not think they need this balance. They think they have enough numbers and they can control. So India's challenge is not to abandon democracy, but to save it from itself. We must align democratic representation with federal fairness, ensuring the parliament reflects both the population and deep, complex diversity of the Indian Union. This is what is necessary, but this is what any person with a common sense will think they will do. But common sense is rare sense. I think they are intoxicated with the majoritarian addiction, and one by one they continue to centralize everything. Okay, so let's do a little slide. There's a Spanish proverb: "A tree born crooked never straightens its trunk." Okay, so it applies to RSS and BJP because they have a crooked mind, and you cannot expect anything equality, fairness, or true federalism from them. I think now the solution is not going to come from RSS and BJP because people know what their agenda is, what they want. I think the solution is going to come from minorities. They have to unite, or they have to separate regionally into different structures. I think this is very dangerous step the Indian government has decided, which will break India. But I think this was artificial union, and sooner or later this was going to happen. Now you see the true color of this majoritarian community. Say, tree born crooked never straighten its trunk. Okay. They cannot change their behavior because their agenda is Hindutva. So this is you have any question on this? I think my conclusion is this is going to disfranchise the southern states, and they have to think differently.
I think one of the statements you made, Dr. Dr. Grow, my mind was thinking ahead. It was almost a comment that you made almost offhand, and I think there's a huge story, and I wonder if you even have understood the significance of something that you said. And it's about the Parliament building itself, which was built, what was it, a couple of years ago. It was opened in that great fanfare. And of course, a building like that must have been planned years in advance. And as you just almost offhandedly referred to, it was built clearly to house at least 800 MPs. That, by implication, does mean that years previously, somebody must have had in mind this whole plan. This whole thing hasn't just appeared impulsively. There must have been a plan in place, presumably by the BJP party and by that Reed Hindutva RSS or whatever. They must have known and planned this years in advance, that they knew they were going to change the political structure of India with this in mind.
Yeah, that's why they built a new building. It was not the old building was falling down. They had this plan, and interesting thing is when they opened the parliament building, they brought some religious statue and they worshipped that, even though India's constitution is not supposed to be for one religion. The president of India, the lady who comes from the south, she should be the one inaugurating this process. She was not involved in it. So all the signs were there, but sometimes people, there's no voice, free voice there. There's no free press there. So there's some people raise that question, but it was obvious what is coming now. Even now, I think because there's no free press, so not many people are talking. Some southern states, especially the chief minister of Tamil Nadu, he's strongly opposing it, and they said they are determined to make sure it doesn't happen. I don't know if they will succeed. If they don't succeed, I think they will know what the alternative is.
Well, this is actually really the interesting debate about all this, because the whole argument, the philosophy of how they're justifying this is very seductive. It does, I suppose, make sense. There is an argument to say that in any democracy there should be one person, one vote, so everybody should have an equal proportion of votes, essentially based on the number of people. Of course, that philosophy is great in theory, but in practice it doesn't really stand up, because as you've demonstrated in this presentation, it creates anomalies, it creates problems, democratic problems. And likewise, in any other country, for example, we'd have a similar debate here in the UK, because of course it's like the urban constituencies against the rural constituencies, where you've got massive demographic differences. You've got millions of people in the city and a very few people in the country. So, but we get around that by saying each part has an equal say, as in the existing status in India. But of course, if you then give each person a single vote, it does create that imbalance. So, of course, then it does lead on then to this debate, and as you've obviously raised the key question here, and predicted, interestingly, by Dr. Ambedkar himself back in the 1950s when he wrote about this. He actually did predict, if you weight the whole political spectrum towards the cow belt, the northern Hindi-dominated states, all you're going to do is break up India. So even he could foresee, 50, 60, 70 years ago, he could predict where this would lead. So, as indeed we're discussing now, and indeed the leader of Tamil Nadu has himself, even a couple of years ago, when they were talking about the tax imbalances, and as you've referred to, they're getting only a fraction of a rupee back in terms of every rupee that they donate. Even 2 years ago, the leader of Tamil Nadu was saying, well, look, if this continues, we're just going to break away. So do you think this could potentially be the final nail in the coffin for India as a unified nation?
Yes, I think it's going in that direction. If you think of this, just having presence in parliament without having equality, without any power to change anything, is meaningless. Okay, so these women, they will choose. Who will they choose? They will choose whoever their party decides. This is not going to be representation of the people. There's no primary system like United States. So the party decides who will run. Even the minorities who will come will be puppets of a majority. They will not have a strong voice. So presence does not mean representation always. Okay, these people will raise their hand wherever their whip or the party leader says. The founding fathers of the United States, they were very good people. They debated, deliberated, and for hours and days and months before they came together. And this representation of Senate, with every state having 2 senators, gave a great balance of power. Okay, if it totally was a number of the people there, like Texas, California, and New York could decide who will be the next president, what will happen, and the small state like Vermont, and all that will not have any say. I think this is a true democratic representation designed by good people, very honest people, and with good intent. But on the contrary, in India, there's like the Spanish proverb, this tree is crooked. They decide everything based on what their intent is, not what is good for the country. When they built this new parliament building, they knew what they wanted to do. They increased the number of seats in the new parliament to 850 so that it can accommodate what their agenda is. When the people who are designing, who are controlling are not honest, results is not going to be good.
So do you think, I mean, cynically, when we look at this and we think about really what is our end goal here, and obviously it is Khalistan, do you think cynically there is an argument then, let's support this, let them have this bill, let it go through, because if indeed we do believe it's going to end up in a very, very unhappy nation, if it's going to provoke the southern states like Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Kerala, for them to say, you know what, we've had enough, that is the potential catalyst for the breakup. So do you think cynically we should actually be supporting this?
I think some of my friends says, Modi may be the friend who's going to help us do what we wanted. So, yeah, I think they think they're smart, but they're not smart. I think they are going to, but they don't care. If they have their area to rule, they are happy. They do not tolerate minorities. They don't tolerate minorities, so they don't care what minorities do. They want to kick them out. Now they have not been able to kick them out or kick us out. Now they want to control differently. This is a Gandhian state. I think we talked before, Gandhi, he was so intolerant of other religions, but he always talked differently. When he had a meeting with Muhammad Ali Jinnah. He was asking him to change his mind and not ask for Pakistan. And Jinnah said, no, I don't have a time for you. If you want to meet, you have to come to my house. So they have a meeting 2-3 days in Jinnah's house. He doesn't drink water from his house. He doesn't eat food. He comes to his car and have a lunch. These people are so fanatic, they can't even drink the same water. So to them, I think as long as they have a control, they don't care. They don't care what happens. And I think because of their hatred of the minorities, I think the disintegration is inevitable. I think it's a question of time.
Interesting stuff, but there we must leave it. But we'll be talking again with Dr. Groel soon to continue our discussion. Dr. Groel, it's been fascinating as always. Thanks so much for joining us once again.
Thank you, Angus. Vaheguru ji ka khalsa, Vaheguru ji ki fateh.
And thank you for watching the Satluj TV podcast. We will see you next time.